Guess my hair's okay, right? All right. Is your hair okay? Yeah, you look good. You
Mine's
look
good, man. The shine
yeah.
is there.
The shine. All you need is the shine. Hey, everybody, welcome to the ReCoop. I'm Cooper Daniels, and I'm a guy that knows a little about a lot. And today I have a great guest for you. I am talking to Adi Benari. He is the founder and CEO of Applied Blockchain. They build applications and solutions, blockchain solutions for enterprises and everybody else. And they're also building the London Bridge and SilentData with Algorand Foundation grants. Am I right about that, Adi?
That's correct, Cooper. Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on, by the way.
Okay. No, it's a pleasure. We met at the Algorand events, and
Yeah,
obviously we're on a panel together. It was great, great getting to know you and to be on your show now. Even better.
absolutely. Right. And so, yeah, we did a panel I moderated a panel at Consensus about state proofs. And, you did a presentation at the AVM event about the London Bridge and SilentData and Applied Blockchain. And yeah, I mean, it was fun in Austin, but I'm glad to have you here so I can kind of just ask you whatever I want to ask you. So that's so that's what we're gonna do. So for anybody out there that doesn't know who you are, maybe you can kind of break down, where you've come from, how you got the blockchain, and maybe more specifically Algorand.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I mean, it's
Yeah,
we've been going for quite a few years, so it might take a while.
yeah, let's do it. I have time if you do.
So yeah, Adi Ben-Ari, I'm founder and CEO of Applied Blockchain.
Hmm.
And my background is technical, so I did computer science. I was a programmer, and I spent about 20 years working mainly in enterprises, in large companies, in
Hmm.
telecoms, in insurance, in banking, developing systems, integrating, being a solution architect, an integration architect, and so on. So I was kind of
Right,
working in large companies, and in the last 2 or 3 years, I was working at a bank
right.
here in London. And while I was working at the bank, I met up. I went for a coffee with an old college roommate, and he was trading bitcoins. And this was back in 2015.
Hmm.
And being a techie, I just looked at the tech, right? Not being a
Right.
finance guy, I didn't think about the finance side of it, buying, trading, and so on. I just looked at the tech,
Yeah.
and I thought, and the tech just blew my mind.
Mm.
I just thought this is super interesting. The things I've been doing before then was integration and
Right.
different ways of getting systems to talk to each other and companies to talk to each other.
Right.
And this just looked like a new technology for communication, right? For transacting, for doing things
Mm.
together.
Right.
And so that was my first attraction to it.
Hmm.
So I went and I started coding. At the time, Ethereum hadn't launched yet, but they'd released the code. So I started
Hmm.
coding Ethereum contracts, showed this stuff at the bank. I was doing kind of mortgages, conveyancing through smart contracts and that kind of thing, and kind of imagining how this would play out. And of course, nobody at the bank really understood what I was trying to tell them.
Yeah.
So I became the blockchain guy for that bank and
Hmm.
joined these various forums that were starting to form at the time,
Hmm.
um, and realized there wasn't much happening there. There wasn't much movement. So I saw the opportunity and started the company.
Nice.
And I didn't have any ideas at the time. So the idea was I just loved the technology. So Applied
Yeah.
Blockchain is a technology company for building solutions using blockchain technology. And
Right.
so we met lots of great people who had some great ideas, and then we started building the solutions for them.
Sweet. And you
Okay.
seem and Applied Blockchain. We're going to get to, I know the story goes on because I also asked you
Yeah.
about Algorand, but scrolling through all this stuff seems very important. Privacy seems very important to Applied Blockchain. You're trying to create solutions where people,
Yep.
their digital identity. And I saw that. Did you? And I didn't look too far into this, but maybe you can talk about it just because you're discussing banks. I saw that maybe you guys teamed up with Intel to write a paper about keeping banking data private, or what is that? Am I?
Yeah, it's a fair question, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so continuing the story, I set up this company and we started doing all these
Yeah.
projects, right? And it was big
Hmm.
companies, startups. People came to us and we started writing these smart contracts and building the applications around them and so on.
Hmm.
And then one of our customers said, "Look, we like you, we like the team, we'd like to invest, right? And we'd like
Hmm.
to give you a very big project." That customer was Shell,
Oh,
um,
right.
and so we then did a very big project for Shell, and they invested. And when we had the investment funds, and there's a couple of
Hmm.
VCs that have invested since then.
What
When we got the
what
investment,
year?
sorry,
Sorry, what year was that?
2017.
So Shell has been, because I've noticed that Shell has their fingers in a lot. They've been pretty early to this, actually, haven't they?
Yeah. This
Yeah.
was directly with the trading team at
Oh,
Shell, right?
cool.
The traders.
Okay. Yeah.
So they just wanted to learn about blockchain, and then we started building an application for them, which is now it's a major application at Shell.
Awesome.
Um, but anyway, when we received the investment funds, then we basically set up a part of the company to start developing product.
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked around, and what really interested us was cryptography and
Mm-hmm.
advanced cryptography, and where we could take this technology. And so we started looking at things like zero knowledge proofs, and we
Mm-hmm.
built a protocol with those. Multi-party computation. Again, we started looking at trading environments and things that
Mm-hmm.
we could. So we built various things and tried different things. But a lot of it was focused around privacy, because that's what the technology brings. And it's one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that if you want to build different types of applications on blockchain, especially if you're dealing with things coming from outside the blockchain,
Right.
then you need to consider privacy.
Yeah.
So initially we looked at software-based cryptography, and
Mm-hmm.
then eventually we discovered this Intel SGX technology,
Mm-hmm.
which completely blew my mind, because it's scalable, it's fast, and it really allows you to do a lot of the things that are really very hard still to do with software-based cryptography. So we
Mm-hmm.
discovered this environment where actually we could do all the different things that we wanted, and realized that when we put this together with blockchain, it becomes very, very powerful. So that's why. So we started developing a product around it, which is SilentData,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea was to take data from outside the blockchain, process it in a place where we couldn't see it and we couldn't get
Mm-hmm.
to it, which was
Mm-hmm.
this Intel enclave, and then get
Mm-hmm.
some output from that, which proves something about the data, which could then be verified in a smart contract,
Right.
right? Without revealing anything to the contract.
That's amazing. So,
Okay?
okay, so that's what a hardware enclave is
That's yeah.
that's kind of, because I was wondering that as I was, looking
Okay.
through everything. Yeah. So it's
So
that Intel thing. So nobody ever actually knows. So this is going to be great for KYC and stuff like that.
well,
You know,
we're building with SilentData. We're building a platform where we're initially going to integrate. We're integrating with different Web 2 services,
got it.
and then we're going to let people integrate whatever they come up with, because we don't
Mm,
know what the uses are. But the
right.
idea is that there's a platform that on one side you connect your traditional Web 2 services,
Mm-hmm.
which give access to people's personal, sensitive, maybe company data,
Mm-hmm.
that you definitely wouldn't want to share with a blockchain, let alone with anybody else.
Right.
So you put that data into this enclave, into this environment, and then we can process it, query, prove things about it, and then take that to the dApps, to the smart contract applications.
Got it.
Uh, so so the first example we came up with, when we thought about sensitive data, was bank account data,
Yeah.
right? And so we did
Yeah.
an integration with open banking APIs, which are very popular in the UK, in Europe, and in the US.
Okay.
So we integrated. We basically allowed users to connect their bank accounts to this device,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then they could prove certain queries. So, for example, I could prove that my income is more than, I don't know, let's say $500 a month, right?
Right.
But I'm not showing you what my income is. I'm not giving you access to my bank account. I'm just giving
Right.
you some proof that my income is above a certain amount, and that might give me access to something,
Like a
maybe in
loan or something
DeFi,
like.
maybe
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really where that came from.
Right. Well, because yeah, blockchain is this kind of mix of transparency and privacy, right? So it is very transparent, but certainly when it comes to big businesses and banking and your banking information and your social security number or your
Yeah.
license, whatever, that's not something you just want to be for everybody to see. I mean, that's clear. And that's a huge obstacle, right? I mean, that's a big obstacle, especially when it comes to digital identity. Everybody's talking about their digital identity because we all like to talk about the metaverse and embodying the internet and things like that. So as we get closer to that, this type of digital identity where you can prove things without having to actually tell people things. And this is clearly what led you to Silvio McCauley, right? I mean, this is and Algorand. So I guess I'll let
It's
you
it's actually
continue.
it's a mix of things, right?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'll let you keep going. I'm enjoying this if you don't mind.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So Yeah, so my co-founder, who I met when I just started the company,
Mm.
Francesco, he's Italian.
Yeah.
So that's the
There we
connection,
go.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So
Yeah.
somebody reached out to him from Algorand, and the rest is history. We actually worked together on a proposal, on an
Hmm.
enterprise type proposal together,
Hmm.
partnered on that, and then we got to know the technology, the platform, and realized it was really a perfect fit for everything that we're trying to do, we stand for, and so on.
Right.
Um,
And you're not only, I mean, it's not only Algorand for you guys. You do build on, Ethereum and Solana and, Polkadot,
That's
I
correct.
think.
That's
That's right.
correct. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we started on Ethereum. That was the
Yeah.
only thing around when we started,
Right.
for smart contracts, and most of our work was centered around Ethereum, and then Algorand was probably the next one that we really got deeply involved in, or closely involved in. And
Hmm.
now I think it's fair to say half our work. So the
Yeah.
company's almost 100 people. So
Mm.
what about
It's not a small,
half of the team, and all of our product work is based around Algorand.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been it's a big part of what we do. But yeah, we also develop Ethereum applications or other EVM chains.
Hmm.
We've traditionally had a good relationship with Parity and Polkadot as well,
Hmm.
and we're doing a little bit of work on Solana, on others as well.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I definitely want to, we're going to dive into state proofs, London Bridge. I want to talk more about
Yeah,
silent
yeah,
data, but just in general, maybe I'll ask you, what are your thoughts now about Bitcoin? You saw it, in 2015, and you were enamored, and it opened up this new thing,
yeah.
these new possibilities. But now, what, 7 years later, how are you thinking about the longevity of Bitcoin, its current value, and all of
Yeah,
that?
I'll be honest. I've never really had much of a view on Bitcoin. Right, the thing
Okay.
that blew my mind was actually Ethereum.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Yeah.
and the reason for that was the smart contracts, because then we could
Right.
start developing these applications.
Got it.
Um, and I've I see myself as a technical person who understands the tech, or tries to,
Hmm.
but not as a markets person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So
So I could, I've got no
I'm
idea
not
about
what
the
it's going to
value or
do.
the exactly.
Yeah. But so so you're not gonna talk me. You're not giving me any hopium on the markets. I get it. But
No,
are
absolutely
you?
not.
Yeah. But so you're saying, so if I'm understanding, it's like, okay, Bitcoin was cool, and that was an interesting thing for you to look at, and it was new. It was. But it was really Ethereum that kind of got you excited about the potential for all of this.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
The thing I would say I'm long on, if I can use the financial term, is solid tech,
Yeah.
right?
Uh,
So
oh, you.
there's a sorry,
Sorry, you're talking about Bitcoin or Ethereum?
all of them,
Yeah.
right? For me, the thing that's interesting, this whole space is built on top of technology,
Yeah.
right? And it's only the technology, right?
Yeah.
That's the deal, right?
Yeah. That's the whole thing.
And yeah, and so the fundamentals have to be there. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of nonsense in our space. There's a lot of
Of course.
people and projects taking shortcuts and so on.
Yeah.
And as a technical team, and as people who are really in this for the long term, and looking at that way for our customers as well,
Hmm.
we think about where's the real technology, where's the solid where's the technology that's really been thought through, where are the teams that are building this stuff,
Yeah.
um, and that's what attracted us to Ethereum in the first place. And I think
Right.
that's one of the reasons why it's had its longevity,
Right.
and it's definitely one of the things that's attracted us to Algorand.
Yeah. And then there we go. That's Algorand. And everybody, that's what a lot of people like to talk about, right? They like to talk about the tech, and they like to, not even like they like to, they acknowledge that it's such solid tech. And you have people like Silvio McCauley and Chris Pikert and that whole team at Inc. They're all it's solid, right? And people in the community will complain about, maybe, why is it so slow for network effects? But I mean, it's also not that old. I think it's just 3 years on mainnet, so it's much newer than something like Ethereum. But what are your thoughts about, Algorand, mass adoption, and and more, more awareness towards the technology, and how solid it is?
I mean, it's very tricky, right? It's very
Yeah.
complicated. This space moves incredibly quickly,
Yeah.
and it's still. I think it's still very, very early days,
Right.
right? I mean, I think we haven't scratched the surface yet.
Yeah.
We think about where this technology will go and what it should be doing, um,
Hmm.
and I think we've only just started.
Yeah.
So I'm not
From
all
that
that worried
perspective.
about. Yeah, I'm not all that worried about projects that have got much more marketing, maybe traction behind them, for all
Right.
sorts of reasons. We've seen where some of them have ended up in recent weeks,
Yeah.
and I come back to fundamentals.
Yeah.
So I think if you got your fundamentals right, then you've got as good a chance as anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, in Algorand, you have a very solid, a very good team. A very good core platform, which is proving
Hmm.
itself. The smart contract language is a challenge, right? Because
Hmm.
it's not it's obviously not the one that the majority of developers are used to with Ethereum. It's interesting
Hmm.
because we've been in this space for a long time. When we first started, everyone complained about Solidity and Ethereum, right?
Hmm.
And all the next generation of blockchains were really, well, these are all the problems on Ethereum with Solidity, and here's a much better way of doing things. And I
Hmm.
think Algorand's virtual machine is optimized, right? It's optimized to make Algorand faster. It's optimized to give you the primitives that you need, and so on. So it has all these optimizations which are useful, and allow Algorand to be as performant as it is, and so on. And have
Yeah.
some of the properties it does, but obviously it's been very easy for people to just copy paste code out of Ethereum that's been
Yeah.
around for a while and has proven itself. So
Yeah.
it was always hard. It's hard to predict this stuff, right?
Yeah, there's, at Consensus where we were both at, you listen to maybe like the Polygon guy, or, I think it was at the Salt conference, it was the Avalanche guy. And there's a lot of people like, it's only going to be EVM. It's when it comes to layer one, it's Ethereum. And, there'll be layer twos, there'll be several layer
Yeah,
twos. And a lot of people seem to really think that that's what it's going to be.
I think the jury's still out. I
Yeah.
think the shortcut, the quick path has been EVM. People that wanted to copy paste projects onto other chains.
Right.
Those are quick wins. But I see a lot of, we see a lot of very good projects. I'll say some of the best projects, including Algorand,
Hmm.
that have their own platform, their own language, and it's optimized for them. And
Yeah.
there's very good reasons for that as well. So
Yeah.
we've been in the space long enough to know that just what's happening now isn't necessarily what will happen tomorrow.
Yeah, well, and isn't that what everybody does this, right? They think, okay, well, Bitcoin is always going to be the thing. It's always going to be there at number one. And because it's been there for so long. It's been 12 years. That's long. I'm not saying that
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not long, but, and then Ethereum, it's like you're saying, we're at the beginning, right? And that anything can happen. And it's not like
yeah.
Algorand doesn't have any network effects. And it's, you know, probably has something to do with just like your co-founder being Italian. It's like maybe FIFA was like the fact that he was. I think this Italian thing is really
Well,
working for us.
as yeah, as a technologist and as a tech purist, I'd like to think that the tech is what's, if something isn't well built, then it
Yeah.
shouldn't survive, right, in the
Right.
long run, right?
Right.
So some of these other projects that have kind of been marketing first,
Yes.
and are kind of playing catch up with the tech,
Hmm.
it can go either way, right? If the tech doesn't catch up, then they'll get hit at some point, right? And we've
Right.
seen some of the other platforms really have some major issues.
Right. And so
Uh,
maybe
yeah.
I'm gonna use you to help me kind of understand something here. So
Okay.
and I know you're building on several chains, so I'm not necessarily trying to get you to throw anything under the bus or anything, but
Yeah.
let's talk about Solana for a second. So,
Okay.
Solana goes down a lot, right?
I'm gonna get in trouble here.
Yeah, maybe. And then we just saw, this whole thing with, I guess it's called Solend or whatever, and they're trying to get that whale account, and it turns out that they're smart contracts. So maybe are upgradable, or there's really it seems to be on a lot of the Solana smart contracts a single point, is centralized. I mean, it's just that's what it is. Now, I guess I have a two-layered question. Is that same capability there on Algorand? Do you know? Can you?
I don't know the specifics of that, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not familiar with the details of that.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, in principle, these things shouldn't be centralized, right? You
Yeah,
shouldn't. I guess the way smart contracts are set up is they're deployed as code with rules,
right.
and whatever those rules allow, if they allow one party to upgrade the contract itself, then that's what they allow. If they don't, there shouldn't be another way to change things, right?
Yeah.
If there is, then we should be asking ourselves questions, because the trust in the blockchain comes from the fact that you know that the technology is working in a certain way,
Hmm.
and abiding by certain rules. If that can be interfered with, then how can you trust to put your token in there, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
I mean,
the, the,
absolutely.
the problem in the space is that the beauty of it is that it's, the tech is there. It's all built on cryptography.
Hmm.
We can trust it. It's transparent. It's, if it's set up the way it's supposed to be set up, then we can trust it, right, to a large
Right.
extent. And the problem in the space is that people, just because it's transparent doesn't mean people really look at it and check it,
Well, that's
right?
absolutely true. Yeah.
And we wrote a report recently. We had an investor come to us in January who wanted to put a lot of who runs a fund, and he wanted to put a lot of money into Terra.
Hmm.
And he said to us, "Look, can you? I'm a bit, I'm a bit nervous. I've got." He had a relatively big fund. He said 1% of all global assets at that point in time were crypto, and he said, "I'm going to put 1% of my fund into crypto." And he was looking at Terra, and he said, "Can you?" He asked us to sort of do some research and put together a paper on the different insurance options and risks and so on. And we did, and we described the risks, and we described how it could collapse. Right?
Hmm.
And what we described is what actually happened. And we've since got permission to publish the paper, which we have.
Oh, good.
Um, but what this illustrates is that all the information is there.
Yes.
Right? There wasn't really a surprise in Terra because it worked the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
It did what it said on the tin. There wasn't anything going on behind the scenes that changed that. Right?
Right.
It's just people didn't really look very carefully at the tin. Right? They just
Right.
saw someone else was going there, and it said 20% on the door. So there you
Yeah.
go. So
Right.
so this is true of platforms. This is true of protocols. People like to say, "Well, we don't need regulation because you can trust the code because you can check it and so on." That's
Right.
fine as long as we check the code.
Right. Yeah, just as long as we all have a friend like you that can do it. But like me, I mean, what am I going to check? I'll check it and it'll be like, "Oh, that's oh good," I mean, whatever.
Okay, I
Like,
mean that's
yeah.
the deal, though, right? That's the deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just real quick back to Solana, just because it's a good example, I think, because
Um,
mentioning network effects, as pertaining to Algorand, Solana is non EVM, and it seemed to gather some steam. Obviously,
mhm.
it's extremely popular for NFTs, and there's a lot of money there and everything like that. So when you compare something like Solana and a lot of those, how concerned, if you're looking at Solana, are you about all these outages, these reboots, these you know the different things? Like, do you see it as, well, they're in beta for a couple years, beta for
Yeah, I mean
an
this is what I meant about the kind of the tech catching up with the marketing, right?
yeah,
Um,
right.
so I mean Solana, I don't know all the details, but obviously a lot of trading activity, FTX and so on,
Hmm.
brought a lot of traffic to the Solana platform, brought a lot of developers. There's certainly a lot of activity. There's a lot of ideas. It's very exciting to see so many people doing all these different projects.
Right.
When we look at the underlying tech, I haven't looked at it super close, but from what I've seen, first of all, um, the technology that you need in order to host Solana is very large, right?
Hmm.
So and therefore by its nature, can't, I think it's relatively centralized. That's
Yeah.
the first thing. Second, I don't think it has the mechanics that Algorand does to be more decentralized. Yeah,
Right.
right.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
then you look at the outages, and that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
And reliability of these networks. You've got a network which everybody treats as a safe place. This is where I'm putting my assets. This is where I'm running my applications.
Right.
You need those guarantees, right? This is why I go back
Yes.
to the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a game here, right? Will the technology catch up with
To the marketing. That's it.
with the marketing, with the requirements,
And
or will there be will there be more issues, which
yeah.
might eventually drive people to a more robust technology? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that it's I never quite, put it so
Yeah,
simply in my head,
but
but it is really
yeah,
like, will the market catch up to the technology like Algorand, and will the Solana
yeah,
technology catch up to the great
yeah.
marketing,
If I look at the other blockchains, some of the other ones that are out there, so Polygon started as again, not decentralized, not
Yeah.
another instance of Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
And then because people loved the fact that it was cheap,
Yeah.
they
They
just
just
all went over there and did all their activity there. And now over
right.
time, they're building out cryptography, zero knowledge, roll-ups, and all these other things, and making
Yeah.
the network more decentralized. But it's the forces were, it wasn't that there was robust tech there in the first place, and then or that they'd solved some great technology problems. As far as I'm aware, when they first
Yeah.
started, it was more, this was an alternative destination. It's very quick and cheap, and
Yeah.
then with all of that traffic came is now the really catching up
So
with all that technology.
they are catching it up. Yeah, I mean, because I
Yeah,
remember hearing from Vitalik Buterin being like, "Well, it's far too centralized for my comfort, but it's
yeah,
also helping people transact on Ethereum until we figure this out." So it's
exactly.
it's like this kind of
Yeah,
Sophie's choice type of thing. And
yeah, and
you're seeing now, right? You're seeing people kind of want bailouts, and there's a lot of things crashing. And I'll see on Twitter a lot of people like, well, what's so wrong with centralization? It's like, Jesus, like what? How have we gotten back to
well, that's
here? Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I
what?
mean
Yeah. What do you?
that comes back to the other thing is what questions are people asking when they're actually using these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's 20% over there, so and everybody's over there already, so I'll just head over
Yeah.
there, right? Or
Yeah.
you know,
Thankfully, I saw that, I was like, man, 20% on a stable coin. And I also watched it trade within a certain range. And I thought, this
yeah,
seems like easy money. And then anytime I
yeah,
think easy money, I'm like, okay, there's got to be something wrong. So thankfully, I pulled back, because I would hate to
right.
be one of those people that got wrecked by that. But it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me either.
No, I mean, that's it. It was a risky. It had a lot of risk, obviously, involved in it.
Yeah.
The other types of blockchains that we see, which also came out around the same time with Algorand, is those networks of networks like
Yeah.
Polkadot and Cosmos and so on. Now,
Right.
very good teams, very good technology.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not completely convinced that that paradigm of these all having these different sub networks that specialize in different things is necessarily the optimal way forward. And
Right.
that was something that we spoke about in Decipher as well.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why I said I think simplicity is really what we all want.
Right.
Because if you can solve the problems of throughput, transaction fees, scalability in one place, then you can get your composability. You can make things easier for users. All these different blockchains and networks of networks and so on add complexity. And when I
Right.
try to get my family to use NFTs and move from one network to another because the NFTs were being sold in one and they wanted to sell them on the other, it was just
Yeah.
an impossible mission, right?
Yeah. You
All
can't.
these things that we tech guys think, oh, we'll just add that bit over there and then we've solved all the problems. We're actually
Yeah.
adding complexity.
Right. Right. So, okay. So let's get on track here. So, okay, you're you mentioned well, actually, before we do that, you mentioned Cosmos and these separate chains, and I may reveal some ignorance here, but with all of these, like, parachains, and don't they need validators and their own validators, and doesn't that just end up like very kind of, centralized in a lot of ways? Is that the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, setting up your own network isn't trivial, right? And
Yeah.
getting the incentives right and getting a broad enough validator set is hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we've seen we've seen many blockchains that have been compromised because the validator set's been compromised, right? Because it was
Right.
too small, it wasn't decentralized enough, right?
Right.
I think the Ronin network, which had the bridge attack, which was a big
Mhm.
gaming platform, the attack on the bridge was through the lack of decentralization, right? It was
Yeah.
actually through the nodes of the network.
Yeah.
So this idea that you can easily spin up a sub network, um, it's not trivial, right?
Yeah.
Because just because you've got a group there doesn't mean you've got real security. The whole premise of blockchain, the whole idea of it, and the value comes from the fact that you can trust the network,
Yeah.
and this trust is a relative thing, right? It's not binary. You can
Right.
trust it more if there's less chance of it being compromised, if there's less chance of the group being compromised, if there's less chance of the group colluding to the runoff with your assets, and so
Right.
on. So these are the fundamentals. Again, if you dilute them, you're taking big risks.
Yeah. And then even if you think about it in a kind of global with the way the world is right now, and you have Russia, China, it seems like they're kind of going after the petrodollar. There's a lot of disruption, and you have no idea where this is going to head. And true decentralization, where no single government can shut something down, and there's nodes here, and then there's nodes in England and all across the world, and it's actually distributed, will actually creates a robustness, and is actually what we are, what everybody set out to do in the first place. And it seems like we're trying, a big portion of the people that are in this space are just constantly compromising for a quick yield, or it's whatever. It's about JPEGs and NFTs. I'm joking. I own NFTs. I'm not talking down to NFTs, but still, it just becomes flipping in market conditions rather than actually what it is, the value it brings. So do you see decentralization as an important component to all of this, right?
I think it's what it's all about, right? If you
Yeah,
take out decentralization, we build blockchain applications. We get a lot of people coming to us with projects,
right,
right? And quite often we try to take them apart, right? And actually work out, do we need a blockchain for this? Where's the value, and so on. And ultimately, it does come down to that. It's does decentralization actually make this better for everybody,
right,
right?
right.
And it's does it make the solution more efficient? Does it make it more secure? Does it make it cheaper? Does it make it more attractive to users because it looks after their interests more?
Yeah,
And so decentralization obviously offers this new model. As you said, it's super interesting to think of this network that just cuts across humanity,
yeah,
and we could potentially, not potentially, we can all transact on,
yeah.
and the decentralization also brings with it a lot of efficiencies, I think,
Hmm.
primarily through these smart contracts.
Right.
And that's because the smart contract can act as an escrow. So I can
Hmm.
put money in, you can put your product in. You only get your, the product only comes out the other side if the money's there. We don't need the middleman, right? The
Right.
smart
Yeah.
contract gives us that, and DeFi is really just a kind of an extension of all of that.
Yeah.
That is efficiency, right? To do
Yeah.
that before, we would have needed a building full of people and admins and legal and all the rest of it. And now we
Right.
can do that with people we don't know across the world,
Of
just
course.
through a piece of code, right? That for
Yeah.
me is pure efficiency. That
Yeah.
efficiency is only possible because of decentralization,
Yeah.
and that's the future of transacting.
And I promise to get back on track here, but so when I'm going to keep on saying that, I'm totally just having the conversation I want to
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
I hope it's okay. But so with that being said, what are your thoughts on like proof of work versus proof of stake? And then we could also add pure proof of stake, the Algorand consensus.
Yeah.
Are you somebody that looks at proof of work and thinks, okay, that's antiquated and that's not a realistic solution? Or, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Proof of work for me is kind of a purist solution, right? It has a
Yeah.
purity about it
Right.
that we haven't been able to achieve in the other protocols,
Right.
right? Um, and that purity is really that balance of economic incentives for anonymous parties, for large groups of anonymous parties, and so on.
Right.
But that comes at a very, very high price, right? And that price is obviously economic because that's part of the mechanics of it. But
Hmm.
it's environmental. It's also speed and scale and throughput and so on. So even though it has that purist certainly from a tech perspective and an economic perspective, a model attached to it, I think we've had to move away from it. So I
Yeah.
think Ethereum looks like it's doing the right thing, and Algorand obviously did,
Yeah.
and most other sort of next generation blockchains have done the same thing for the same reason.
Yeah.
But then there's different ways of doing proof of stake.
Right.
As you say, some blockchains have remained very centralized, and it's not always very transparent or clear how they're controlled.
Right.
Others, and I think Algorand does fall into this category, have gone to a lot of effort to make sure the protocol is more decentralized.
Right.
Um, Proof of stake does also have this the concept that if you have more funds, then you have more control. That's also a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could argue that proof of work has gone that way as well. I mean, who's bought all these farms of servers? Right?
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
the
So it's a
yeah.
mess, but it, there's bad things on both sides is basically
Yes,
what it is, and so it's like
yeah,
one of those choices. And then this is my last off topic, and then I want to talk state proofs, London Bridge, and
yeah.
we'll plow forward with that. But with your with your emphasis, it seems on privacy as well. Do you see coins like Monero or Zcash or even like Litecoin with their new upgrade, do you find those compelling at all, is it or is it not really something that you're too focused on?
I mean, I think intellectually,
Yeah.
Zcash was mind blowing, right? I think it was probably a bigger event than Bitcoin, right? From a
Right.
pure geek perspective, right?
Okay. Maybe you can
Uh,
tell me. Tell me a little bit about. We're talking about Zcash on the Algorand
right.
podcast, but anyway, sorry.
Zcash was one of the first applications of zero knowledge proofs, right?
Right.
And it was certainly, as far as I'm aware, is the first blockchain that was really built around the zero knowledge proof, or first
Hmm.
mainstream blockchain that was
Yeah.
built around the zero knowledge proof protocol, which of course Silvio McNally was the godfather of.
Yeah.
Um, but this was really trying to create a version of Bitcoin that used zero knowledge proofs for privacy.
Hmm.
And they did it, and I think it was a big achievement at the time. Now
Right.
it's kind of like Bitcoin itself in that it's really slow, it's inefficient, it's and so on.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it was definitely a milestone.
Yeah. And
On privacy itself, I've got mixed views because I'm not comfortable with the idea of, I don't know, a platform that can be easily used for nefarious purposes, right? I mean,
yeah.
I've got family, kids. I come from a
Yeah.
country where, unfortunately, we've had a lot of terrorism. I kind of, I'm conflicted,
Yeah.
right? I'm not that comfortable with a place where really we can enable. It's great to enable privacy so people don't feel like they're being watched by the state and they have their rights. But on the other hand, I also, I think there should be ways to prevent certain people from doing certain things as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like it was my idea over here. There was a whole, uprising about defund the police. And I'm like, I feel like it's a lot easier to say defund the police when you don't have a bunch of children. You know what I mean? Like it's easier to like be like, oh yeah, the police are the problem. But when you're walking around the streets of Los Angeles and it does not feel safe, with your two small children, it's just kind of like, okay, well, maybe fund them a little bit at least. Like, what are we doing
Yeah,
here? And which
yeah,
they're funded, obviously. But the point is taken is that if Monero is often used for illicit things, I mean, I think it's the one to move. It's the one they go to. So Hitman and all that stuff. So there's a dark side to it. Okay. All right. So there we go. And so we did touch on SilentData, but we haven't really talked about the London Bridge, which is going to be leveraging state proofs, and it's a bridge from Algorand to Ethereum. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are with that, exactly how it's going to work, and how does it use state proofs, and how close we are to having that go live.
yeah. So we started building London Bridge when the foundation put out a grant program to
Oh,
encourage bridges in the ecosystem. So we
okay.
responded. We were one of a number of companies that responded to that.
Mm-hmm.
We started building London Bridge, and the technology that Algorand has been encouraging us to look at and use is state proofs.
Mm-hmm.
State proofs are a way for a proof of stake blockchain to be verified outside of itself. right? So if you're outside the blockchain and you want to know that a transaction has really come and really happened on that blockchain and is part of a verified block, that's not an easy thing to achieve on proof of stake blockchains. It's
Right.
actually easier on proof of work.
Right.
On proof of stake, you need a special feature like state proofs to be able to do that.
Got it. Got
Okay.
it. So it
Yeah.
would be easy to build. It's easier to build a bridge from Algorand to Bitcoin than it is Algorand to, well, I guess eventually Ethereum.
I mean, Bitcoin is it doesn't smart contracts. It's very hard to
Yes.
do to do anything like that with
Thing.
Bitcoin.
Bad example.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
right, but with Ethereum and the other blockchains, you have smart contracts, and the idea is that with bridges, is you deposit your funds into a smart contract on one blockchain,
Yeah.
and they appear on they get locked up or burnt
Wrapped or
there,
whatever. Yeah.
and then they appear on from a smart contract on the other blockchain.
Right.
And that other blockchain, before it can mint those new wrapped tokens, it needs to know that there really has been tokens deposited on the original chain. They really have been locked up or burnt. And
Right.
so the bridge infrastructure needs to be able to verify that. So it needs to know for a fact what's happened on that blockchain, and ideally the other blockchain can verify it itself,
Right.
right? And so state proofs are a way of really exporting the evidence of what's happened on Algorand and allowing it to be efficiently verified on Ethereum or on another chain.
And
Yeah,
so, and it is, and it's also, it's lightweight and it's trustless as well.
yeah,
It's creating a lot of, because, obviously current bridging solutions are usually exactly what you said. It's like a vault, and you deposit,
right. I mean,
your Ethereum into a vault, and then they wrap the Ethereum. We have that. We do that with Algo Mint on Algorand. And, so yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something.
so I was going to say, we talked about people not checking the fundamentals of the blockchain and not checking the fundamentals of the DeFi protocols where they're putting all their coins.
Hmm.
Bridges is the last thing people bother checking.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, bridge technology and security was quite horrific in the first versions of bridges that we had out there.
Hmm.
So you basically had a server that sits in the middle, listens to events on one blockchain, and has a key, and that key just mints tokens on the other blockchain. But there's really no security there. There's no cryptography, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing really tying those things together. There's nothing stopping a bridge operator from just doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
So, and they could, for example, just not do anything. So your
Yeah.
tokens are locked up, and there you go.
Yeah.
Or they could just mint lots of tokens on the other side. Literally, they could do that
They could do that. So
in many of the
it's
bridges.
a
Yeah.
definition of trusting something that doesn't really have to identify itself, isn't regulated, has no real, there's not a lot of consequences for a lot of these things. So it's not a real solution.
And
It's
also, people get religious about the blockchain itself, right? What's the
yes.
technology? What's the consensus? Is it decentralized? And then
Yeah.
the tokens moving across, nobody worries about, right? You're actually giving them to someone and hoping that they'll be kind enough to send them to the other side. Uh, that's
Yeah, right.
literally how some of these bridges work.
Okay.
So the approach on Algorand is obviously been different. The approach on
Mhm.
Algorand is we'll give you the tools
Mhm.
to be able to verify on the other side before those tokens are minted. And so the two sides are tied together through cryptography, which is
Mhm.
really how we want things. Only
Right.
when the evidence appears from the right place and it's been verified can something happen over there, and vice
Right.
versa.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you aware? Did you see on Twitter? It was like a week ago. The Ethereum Foundation tried to poke holes into the, code of, I guess it was state proofs. I think that they saw, they thought they saw something there,
I was going to say, I mean, I haven't seen the specific exchange, but
but
I've heard that Ethereum is either put out or is putting out something equivalent, because as they're moving to a proof of stake chain, they have to do something similar.
got it. Got it.
Otherwise, their chain can't be verified when outside of itself.
Right.
Um, but the other thing I wanted to say about London Bridge
Mm,
uh, is that we've added another kind of another piece of security in the middle, right?
okay.
And it's the secure enclave, the same technology that we use in SilentData. And
Right.
the reason we put it out there is because Ethereum at the moment is super expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheaper now, but it's still super expensive.
Yeah.
And And so that means that to verify anything, to do anything on Ethereum, we have to be really careful what we're doing there. And if we're verifying something from another blockchain, that's going to be quite complicated. Even if it's made compact and so on, it's still going to be complicated and expensive.
Got it.
So, and state proofs themselves are being developed in two stages. The first stage is to bring the evidence from Algorand,
Hmm.
and the second stage is to make it really compact using
Got it.
what's called a zero knowledge proof. So
Hmm.
we're now about to receive the first stage. That's nearly there.
Hmm.
What we will do in London Bridge is we'll take that proof into an enclave,
Hmm.
we'll verify it on the enclave, and then the enclave will produce evidence that it's verified and everything's correct from Algorand, and will give something very simple to the Ethereum contract to then use before it issues its token. So
Got it.
we're kind of creating this interim stage where we can make things even cheaper and more efficient at this stage at the moment
Got it.
by adding this extra piece of technology in the middle.
Oh, got it.
And
So
and,
okay, so
and
Algorand is the state proofs that they're delivering in July, which they say is going to
yeah,
be it's not going to be that compact. It's not where it's going to end up. And so you guys are
co-
using this technology that you've already worked with and to compress it and make it cheaper
correct,
and easier to move. Got it.
correct. So we may find that the final version of state proofs is so efficient that we don't need the bit in the middle anymore. We can just go
Yeah.
straight and do everything on the Ethereum contract. But in the
Hmm.
meantime, we're setting it up in that way so we can get the end-to-end security and trust layer that we need.
So okay, so then once state proofs come
Mhm.
next month, if everything goes according to plan and timing, is
Yeah,
how close is the London Bridge ready to be deployed and for people to use?
yeah. I mean, the only thing we're waiting for the state proofs, then we do a security audit, and then we
Then
should
you're
be good
ready.
to go. Yeah, yeah. So
And
we've
is
already
the
been
I
speaking to. Sorry, go on.
no 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 you've already been speaking to who? Yeah.
Yeah, we're speaking to a whole bunch of really great Algorand projects and getting
Hmm.
everybody ready, and we're going to be testing with them on the testnet. And then once we come out of the security audit, then we'll go live.
Right. And is the long-term vision to, there's the London Bridge, and then is there going to be other bridges to other chains? Are we going to have, I don't know, where else would we want a bridge? I guess Solana would be a place, or
Yeah.
I don't know, Cardano or something,
Yeah, they could. I mean, the easiest next set of destinations will probably be other EVM chains,
right? Like Avalanche. Yeah, right. That's
yeah,
yeah.
exactly, or chains which are. It's not just about the contract; it's also about the light client.
Mm-hmm.
So chains with light clients that are similar to Ethereum's or similar
Mm-hmm.
in the way they need to be validated, and yeah, where the demand is. So it might be
Right.
Solana, Avalanche, as you said, and some of the others.
Yeah, wherever it is. Yeah, wherever
Cool.
the
Yeah,
demand is. And
yeah,
so then just going back to silent data again.
yeah,
So, what's the ultimate vision? How close are we? Like, when this goes live? What can we, as a guy that's using DeFi and is in the world? Like, how is this going to benefit me? And what am I excited about when I learn about silent data? or.
yeah. So the two main things we see with silent data is one is identity credentials, right?
Right,
And they could be proof that you've been KYC'd, obviously, and AML checks and things like that,
yeah,
and you've got a bank account maybe, but also it could be proof that you own your social media accounts, right? And that
right,
could be it, right? So
mm-hmm,
maybe you prove that you're the person behind this account, but you're not revealing anything else about yourself, right? And that account
mm-hmm,
itself might be anonymous.
right,
So linking, it's really proving and linking to things outside the blockchain.
mm-hmm,
Certainly anything to do with identity credentials, and
mm-hmm,
it's really just a case of anything that has an API that we can integrate with,
mm-hmm,
we can then use in this way. And the second thing is just tokenization of real world assets.
right,
So again,
right,
when there's an asset that you're bringing to the blockchain, and the value and the provenance, the origination of that asset is comes from outside the blockchain, then you
mm-hmm,
really want some proof points. Because today, the way it's structured today is, there'll be some entity that is effectively importing these assets
and
and
vouching like
tokenizing them, and basically you're completely trusting them. And
right.
we think this should be. We want to take the trust and extend it outside the blockchain.
Mhm.
And so what we'll do with silent data is we allow you to hook up to different data points that will basically show you where the assets come from, show you what the properties of the asset are, show you what the risks are, and sort of the asset's credentials.
Got it.
Right?
What's an example? Give me an example of an asset that you think would be perfect for this.
Okay, so the first one that we've built with SilentData is invoices, right? Company
Hmm.
invoices. So company
Right.
invoices are a financial asset that a company can use in order to get financing. Right?
Right.
Someone's going to pay me in 60 days. In the meantime, I can go to someone else to get the money early, and I'll sell them the invoice. Right?
Got it. Right.
So that's an asset. It's an asset, right? It's an asset that can be financed,
Yeah.
and it has some great properties that actually make it interesting for tokenization.
Hmm.
Now, how do you know the asset's good? Right, somebody's created an invoice. Right? So first of all, you
Hmm.
want to know it's come from the company's accounting system. You want to know that the companies on both sides are real companies. Right? You might
Hmm.
want to know that they've got funds in their bank account, or they've got some trading history.
Hmm.
You might, and it's really both sides. It's the company that's created the invoice, and it's the one that's going to pay as well.
Hmm.
So there are all these different things that will strengthen the value of the asset, right, and reduce the risk around it. And so
Right.
what we've done is we've paired up with an invoice financing company, and we're getting we're getting these different data points. They all come into the enclave.
Hmm.
We don't see the data. It all gets processed in this private environment, and then there's some evidence, which is effectively it comes up into a score for that invoice, which is based on all of that data and all those different data points. And so we can prove that we've got all these different data points and that they all lead to this score, and that
Right.
score can then be verified, can be part of the token. So when you trade that token, you could say, I only want invoices that are above a 7. And
Right.
what does above a 7 mean? Well, you look at the SilentData code, which will be transparent and verifiable, and it will tell you, well, we've done we've been through all these checks, and if it passes all of this, then it's a 7. And so that's how you can start to take data and data sources outside the blockchain and bring them to life through a token, which can then be used in DeFi and in all these other protocols that we're all dreaming up,
Yeah.
and with the trust that goes with it.
I mean, this is the real exciting part of this technology, right? Is that we can actually do things like this. You can pull these things from the real world and you can verify it and you can have these things tokenized. It's because, we're in, not that to talk markets, but we're in such a bear market where most of the people in this, and then all the accusations are coming. There's all a Ponzi, everybody is, you know, everybody's pointing fingers at these people that believed in this and all of this. And so, what is it that maybe, I mean, we've talked about it. You talked about smart contracts. You talked about how it removes middlemen. And we talked about how it can create rails that can't just be shut down by one entity and all that. Those are really important things. But what is it that you believe that is the main
Yeah,
value of all this?
yeah. I keep coming back to the same thing, which is technical efficiency.
Yeah,
Right? So it sounds a bit boring, but actually, it's the reason why we started using Excel instead of paper. Right?
exactly.
And it's the
Yeah,
reason why we use databases then instead of Excel,
right.
and it's the reason why we use internet instead of calling people on the phone or whatever.
Yeah,
All these things basically make our lives easier, right? And they make
right.
things faster, cheaper, safer. And that's exactly what this is. I don't think there is another technology available to us today which allows us to transact as efficiently as a blockchain does,
Right.
right?
There it is.
And the blockchain isn't really used at the moment for it's used for hardly anything in terms of what the world is transacting, right?
Yeah.
The way businesses pay each other and deal with each other, the way
Yeah.
goods are traded, and so on. I mean, it's we haven't scraped the surface yet, and so all
Right.
that efficiency is waiting, and it's not being used yet.
Yeah. It's kind of like, blockchain could just replace, like, for example, Swift. Swift could be, they,
Well, I
or,
mean, we get, we've got. I mentioned we're a company of 100 people now, so we get, we have revenues. Half of our funds, half of our invoices that are paid to us come
hmm,
through as USDC,
yeah.
right?
And so it makes it so easy.
Yeah, it's instant.
Yeah.
Clients in the US and clients everywhere. We get, I receive an email that says I've wired the funds, but the funds are there before the email.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that I think that maybe us over here in the United States, we only see what we do, and it's like, oh, well, you can
Yeah,
just Venmo, you can just, you can just do this, but it's like, wait, no, actually, if you wanted to send me money from
yeah,
England, it's a much more expensive, convoluted
yeah.
process.
So
Yeah.
there's the payments, but really the magic is is layering the contract on the business logic on top of that. The escrow that I talked about and all the different things you can do there. That's really where the efficiencies are, and it comes into everything that we trade, every way that we do business or that people deal with each other in businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. I want to, close up with this question because watching you at Decipher, it was a lot of fun. Everybody wanted to talk about a multi-chain future, and you were like, "But what if it isn't? What if there is a chain of chains? What if Algorand is the settlement layer for all of this stuff?" Like, so maybe just for everybody out there that's listening and watching, like, what is your thesis on how Algorand could potentially become the chain of chains, and that type of
Yeah,
thought
I mean,
process?
I think it does come back to that long game, and really this space is built on these security fundamentals and this technology, and I think if you have a solid solution which does the job, which does the job better than other solutions, then I think you have a better chance ultimately of surviving and of attracting more and more activity.
Right.
And I think Algorand has, we've talked about the technology, we haven't talked about the team.
Yeah.
But for me, having being a techie and being in this space since 2015, it's all about people,
Yeah.
right? It's about the team I've got. It's about the customers we deal with. It's about the partners. And I genuinely mean it. The Algorand people that we've worked with and dealt with have been, it's a really impressive team,
Got it.
and really professional. And I think if you put those two things together, the team and the tech, then I'd be very surprised if the protocol doesn't do very well.
Right. And you had also mentioned on that panel in consensus, you had this idea where it's like, yeah, well, tech will start here and then it kind of veers out here, but then it usually kind of, wraps back around and gets back to like here or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
You said that the journey could be expansive. Like right now we're in this multi-chain, everybody's trying to figure it out, is racing to be the best and,
yeah.
get the people over and all of that. And but it will consolidate to the most efficient, I think is what you're
Yeah, I mean,
what you're thinking.
yeah, we see this in all tech cycles, right? We saw
Yeah.
it with the web, where all these sites came up, and then eventually, not all of them survived, and then some became dominant, right? And
Right.
nobody believes in the tech, and then suddenly everybody believes in it, and now everybody's building with it,
Yeah.
and now there's a gold rush, and then well, actually, there isn't that much gold there. It's still a lot of gold, but
Yeah.
so then we go through these cycles.
Yeah.
And I think it's blockchain is not the only space, but in blockchain everything is accelerated, and we're talking about
Yes.
money here, so it gets even more crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think ultimately, if it is an efficiency play, which I think it is, then I think part of efficiency is also simplicity,
Yeah.
which I talked about earlier. So I think we're all rushing and making things more and more complicated, but I think as the technology matures, we'll need to simplify and consolidate, and just to make things easier for everybody, and that will be part of the efficiency as well.
Yeah.
So that's why I can see it doing this.
Yeah. It's so right to think of it as efficiency because that's technology in general. That's what technology has done during my lifetime. I was, there's been computers around me my entire life, but they were pretty rudimentary, and it's all it's done is make communication,
Yeah.
transacting, just even web 2. It's just all about making our lives more efficient to where we have to pay less attention to all these things. But it's kind of like this thing that happens where we end up paying more attention to technology because we're, but
Well, we
whatever.
can do so much now. Yeah,
Yeah, we can do so much. That's what it is. Well, Adi, I had such a good time. Thank you for taking the time to come on. Is there anything else? Did I leave anything out that we should have talked about? I mean, I know, and I also appreciate your patience as I took us in all these different directions. But is
yeah.
there is there anything that I should have? I should have brought up that I didn't?
No, I think we're good. I think we covered a lot of bases there in an hour.
Yeah. What is it? Oh, over an hour. So I hope
Yeah.
I hope you didn't have anywhere to be. All right.
No, no, we're good.
Well, yeah. Thanks again.
All right, pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.